in the heart of the sky realm of Drakenfell, where floating islands drift through skies painted in hues of fire and ice. Thorne stood on the deck of the Iron Talon, a massive airship bristling with steel and enchantments. The wind howled past, carrying the scent of ozone and danger, as storm clouds gathered in the distance, cloaking the realm in an ominous shroud. Thorne's weathered face betrayed years of dragon hunts, his hands gripping the hilt of his blade, crafted from the fang of a dragon he had slain years ago. This hunt would be different. This time, he wasn't just chasing glory. He was hunting for redemption. Sable, a skilled marksman with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, leaned against the ship's railing, her crossbow polished to a deadly gleam. Her raven-black hair danced in the wind as she watched the skies, ever vigilant for the shadows of their prey. "Storm's coming," she said, her voice low and tense. Thorne nodded, but his gaze was fixed on the swirling clouds above. He knew that within those tempests lay more than dragons. Secrets of the realm waited to be unraveled, and old alliances would be tested. At the helm, Tarek maneuvered the Iron Talon with a practiced hand, his focus unwavering despite the ship's groaning metal and shifting winds. A former sky pirate with a grin that hid more secrets than truths, Tarek had a knack for navigating Drakenfell's treacherous ether streams. "Hold on!" he called out, the ship tilting as they broke through a wall of mist, revealing a landscape of jagged floating islands and the flash of dragon wings. "This isn't just any storm," he added, his voice losing its usual swagger. The air grew thick, crackling with the presence of dragons. A shadow swept over them, a dragon, vast and magnificent, with scales that shimmered like molten gold, arced through the skies, letting out a roar that seemed to rattle the very heavens. Thorne's heart raced. This was no ordinary hunt. This dragon exuded an intelligence and majesty that even he could not ignore. As Sable loaded her crossbow and Tarek steadied the ship, Thorne silently wondered if they were truly prepared, or if they had already underestimated the power of the sky realm. Memories of past hunts flooded Thorne's mind, of comrades lost and victories that came at too high a cost. He tightened his grip on his blade. This was more than a hunt. It was a test of their courage, their loyalty, and perhaps something even more profound. As the Iron Talon soared toward destiny, Thorne felt the weight of the pact that had brought them here, an echo of old vows that might yet shape the fate of the sky realm. Lightning forked across the sky, and the hunt began. The Iron Talon sailed through a break in the storm, but the calm was an illusion, a trap set by the realm itself. Thorne scanned the skies, his senses honed by years of hunting. Sable kept her crossbow steady, her eyes darting between the swirling clouds, while Tarek adjusted the ship's course with a grim determination. The wind carried with it an unnatural stillness, a silence that felt like the calm before a storm more devastating than any they had faced before. Thorne's instincts screamed a warning, but it came too late. From the mist burst a dragon, larger than any Thorne had ever seen. Its wings spanned the heavens, and its scales reflected the storm's lightning, turning each flash into a blinding torrent of light. The beast let out a bone-shaking roar, and the Iron Talon shuddered as its wind-riding enchantment struggled to keep the ship aloft. Sable fired her first bolt, but the dragon twisted with a speed that belied its size, the projectile missing by a hair's breadth. "It's toying with us!" Sable shouted, her voice cracking with a mix of frustration and fear. Tarek gritted his teeth, yanking the ship's controls to the side as the dragon's tail swung through the air, narrowly missing the hull. "Hold on!" he yelled, the Iron Talon dipping dangerously before stabilizing. Thorne braced himself, heart pounding as he watched the dragon circle back, its golden eyes filled with an unnerving intelligence. This was no mindless beast, but a creature with purpose, and Thorne began to wonder if they were truly the hunters or the hunted. With a burst of determination, Thorne called out to Sable and Tarek. "We have to lure it into the ether stream," he commanded, formulating a plan that might just give them an edge. The ether stream was a treacherous current of raw magical energy that could be harnessed or weaponized if one knew how to ride it. Tarek nodded, steering the ship toward the swirling energy field, while Sable adjusted her aim, eyes narrowing as she calculated her next shot. Every second counted, and one wrong move could send them all crashing to the abyss below. As the Iron Talon drew closer to the ether stream, the dragon seemed to hesitate, its golden eyes flickering with something that almost resembled fear. Thorne noticed the shift, a spark of hope igniting within him. But just as quickly, a new threat emerged. Smaller dragons, sentinels of the larger one, swarmed from the mist, their bodies crackling with elemental energy. "We've got company!" Sable called, reloading her crossbow. The odds were stacked against them, and Thorne knew that their pact would be tested in ways none of them could have imagined. The Iron Talon raced toward the swirling ether stream, its metal frame groaning under the stress of the roaring winds and magical energy that threatened to tear it apart. Tarek gritted his teeth, hands steady on the helm, while Thorne and Sable prepared for their final stand against the dragon and its elemental sentinels. The largest dragon loomed closer, its eyes burning with ancient knowledge and raw power. Thorne knew that one wrong move could end them all, but he also sensed a flicker of hesitation in the beast, a sign that there was more at play than a simple hunt. Sable loosed another bolt, this one enchanted with a spell of binding, aimed at the smaller dragons. It struck true, wrapping one of the creatures in chains of glowing energy, but the victory was fleeting. The remaining dragons surged forward, their bodies crackling with magic that could rip the Iron Talon from the sky. Thorne felt the weight of their mission pressing down on him, but he could not falter. He stepped to the front of the deck, blade in hand, and called out to the largest dragon, his voice defiant yet tinged with desperation. "Why do you fight us?" he demanded, hoping that the creature's intelligence might hold the key to their survival. The great dragon paused mid-flight, hovering above them with a grace that belied its massive size. It opened its mouth, but instead of unleashing fire or lightning, it spoke. Its voice echoed with the force of centuries, shaking the air around them. "We are not your enemies, Hunter," it rumbled, its eyes locked onto Thorne's. The truth hit like a bolt of lightning. The dragons had never been the aggressors. They had been guardians, protectors of something far more valuable than the hunters could have imagined. Thorne's mind raced, and he realized that their pact had been a mistake, a manipulation by unseen forces that sought to pit them against the dragons. But there was no time to dwell on betrayal. The elemental dragons, unaware or unwilling to break their own oaths, continued their assault. Tarek shouted from the helm, "We're not going to hold much longer!" The ether stream was mere moments away, its energy churning with deadly force. Thorne's eyes met Sable's, and in that moment, an unspoken understanding passed between them. They had to choose, continue the fight and risk destruction, or trust in the dragon's words and forge a new pact, one that could change the fate of Drakenfell forever. Thorne turned to the great dragon, his voice resolute. "If you are our protector, then help us now," he declared, casting aside his blade as a gesture of trust. The dragon's eyes widened, and it let out a roar that split the skies. The elemental dragons hesitated, as if the bond between them and their leader had been altered. With a surge of energy, the great dragon guided the Iron Talon into the ether stream, shielding the ship with its wings. Magic and stormlight enveloped them all, and for a moment, the line between hunter and hunted dissolved in the maelstrom of power. The ether stream's energy coursed around the Iron Talon, illuminating the skies with an eerie glow. Thorne felt the pulse of raw magic, a force both beautiful and terrifying, as the great dragon guided the ship through the storm. The smaller elemental dragons hesitated, caught between their instincts and the will of their leader. Sable lowered her crossbow, her eyes wide with disbelief. "We're trusting it," she whispered, her voice almost lost in the chaos. Thorne nodded, his heart pounding, knowing that this fragile alliance was all that stood between them and oblivion. Tarek struggled to keep the ship steady, sweat pouring down his face as he fought the ship's buckling frame. "I can't hold this forever," he called out, desperation creeping into his voice. The great dragon's wings shielded them from the worst of the ether stream's fury, but the energy tore at the airship's enchantments, threatening to unravel them at any moment. Thorne stepped beside Tarek, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Hold on just a little longer," he urged, his voice steady. They had no choice but to trust in their newfound ally. The great dragon turned its massive head, speaking once more. "The true threat lies beyond," it said, its voice a rumble that seemed to shake the very sky. Thorne's eyes narrowed, realizing that their struggle was far from over. The ether stream parted, revealing a colossal fortress suspended in the void, a structure of twisted metal and stone, pulsing with dark energy. "What is that?" Sable whispered, her hands trembling. The fortress seemed alive, a heart of corruption beating in the heart of Drakenfell. And Thorne understood that their hunt had been a distraction from something far more dangerous. Sable and Tarek exchanged a glance, the weight of their realization sinking in. They had come seeking dragons, but instead they had uncovered a hidden war, one between guardians and a darkness that sought to consume the realm. The great dragon's eyes glowed with determination. "Will you fight with us, or fall as pawns of those who seek ruin?" it asked, and for the first time Thorne felt a spark of hope. They had a chance, however slim, to make things right. He raised his blade not in aggression, but in a pledge to stand by their new allies. As the Iron Talon approached the fortress, the storm began to abate, replaced by a suffocating darkness that seemed to draw the light from the sky. Thorne, Sable and Tarek prepared themselves for the battle ahead, their bond stronger than ever. "We're in this together," Thorne said, his voice resolute. The great dragon roared, and the elemental dragons fell into formation, a united force against the growing shadow. The hunt had transformed into a war for the very soul of Drakenfell, and there was no turning back. As the Iron Talon approached the fortress of twisted metal and pulsing darkness, Thorne felt the weight of every decision he had made on this journey. The great dragon roared, a call that echoed across the realm, and the elemental dragons surged forward to shield the ship. The fortress responded, its dark energy surging like a living entity, seeking to ensnare everything in its grasp. Thorne's blade, once a weapon of death, now served as a symbol of the alliance that might save the Sky Realm. Sable stood beside him, her crossbow loaded but aimed at the darkness instead of the dragons. "Together then?" she asked, her voice steady despite the terror in her eyes. Thorne nodded, and Tarek clenched his jaw, his hands guiding the Iron Talon into position for their final stand. The storm had passed, replaced by an unnatural stillness as the fortress began to draw in the ether energy, preparing to unleash a wave of destruction that could end them all. The great dragon lowered its head, its golden eyes meeting Thorne's. "The Pact is renewed," it declared, a bond of magic weaving between the dragon and the hunters. Thorne felt a surge of energy, a gift from the dragon's own essence as his strength renewed. The fortress pulsed with a malevolent rhythm, and Thorne knew they had only moments left to act. He raised his blade high, channeling the dragon's power, and drove it into the ship's core, activating the Iron Talon's most powerful enchantments. The energy from the ether stream and the dragon's magic combined, forming a radiant shield that burst outward, clashing with the fortress's darkness. The force of it sent shockwaves through the sky realm, shattering islands and casting shadows into the void. For a moment it seemed as though the darkness would consume them all, but then the great dragon unleashed a final roar and the fortress began to crumble. The shadow energy unraveled, retreating into the void from which it had come. As the skies cleared and the light returned to Drakenfell, Thorne, Sable and Tarek stood together on the battered deck of the Iron Talon. The great dragon hovered beside them, its wings casting a protective shadow. "You have honored the Pact," it said, and Thorne knew that their alliance had changed the fate of the realm. The dragons flew into the distance, guardians once more, and Thorne looked to his companions. Their hunt had become a battle for survival, and in the end, they had chosen to protect, not destroy. The echoes of their pact would live on, a legacy forged in fire and trust.